Hello everyone, my name is Jashara and welcome to my lab demo. GRC isn't paperwork anymore, it's architecture. Today I'm going to show you how I built a fully automated AI-powered continuous compliance platform for FAFO Incorporated using AWS Config, Security Hub, GitLab CI/CD, Audit Manager, and a Pinecone RAG knowledge base. Everything from control monitoring, evidence collection, reporting, and even auditor Q&A is automated. Before writing a single line of code, I began with strategic assessment, mapping every SOC 2 and ISO 27701 requirement to cloud native monitoring. You can see here how each control is mapped to an AWS config rule, Security Hub controls, or automated CI/CD pipelines. Now, this alignment is what makes continuous compliance possible. As you can see here, this is my control file or my control mappings, mostly for SOC 2, but it incorporates both ISO 27701. And this is a nice core to have when we're talking about continuous compliance and which frameworks or audits that your company would need to have this compliance set up for. This is the backbone. Security Hub gives me real-time findings aligned to industry standards, and AWS Config gives me historical drift and continuous rule evaluation. I turned the rule set so we only track what matters to FAFO incorporation, removing irrelevant controls and document why. Now, in Audit Manager, I also created a SOC 2 framework and an active assessment. So every config rule and Security Hub finding maps directly into Audit Manager as automated evidence, and then it gives auditors a clean, centralized view of FAFO's compliance posture. So you'll see in this assessment, well, let's just go back to the security standards. And you'll see here, I've only enabled two standards for this demo, which was AWS Foundational Security Best Practices and CIS AWS Foundations Benchmark version 1.4. And as you see, rules are already, I have some rules set. Some are compliant, some are non-compliant, just so that we can pull just random information from my environment. This is just a sandbox environment. I didn't try to do too much, just so that we can see what we can get back from the evidence of what to fix and remediate or what has already have been remediated. And here is Audit Manager. As you'll see, this is my SOC 2 assessment for FAFO Incorporated. I have controls that are non-compliant, about five non-compliant devices, and then about 15 non-compliance evidence. So if I just jump into assessment real quick, you'll see here that my assessments will go straight to my S3 bucket that I have linked to this assessment. So when Audit Manager and Security Hub will pull in all of those alerts, all of those non-compliant alerts that are tied or mapped, to my controls, it will pull all that information here as far as the evidence from this cloud environment. And from there, you'll see in a moment how I can pull that into my main UI where an auditor, a CISO, or GRC professional is able to come here and ask questions pertaining to security hubs, security standards, rules, and also assessments. Compliance isn't just infrastructure, it's the software development lifecycle. My GitLab CI/CD pipeline transforms application security scans into structured compliance evidence. SAST, IAC scanning, secrets detection, and dependency checks all publish into a unified evidence stream. This gets ingested daily by the evidence collector and attached to the SOC 2 controls. So as you see here, I have both of my SAST and DAS jobs that run for my CI/CD pipeline in GitLab, and they passed. This is my automation engine. So every 24 hours, Lambda gathers config summaries, Security Hub findings, CI/CD outputs, and creates an immutable evidence package. It is pushed to an S3 bucket with object locked enabled, which enforces wormed retention for tamper-proof chain of custody. A SHA-256 hash is also generated to verify integrity. Then AWS Bedrock then generates a two-page executive summary translating raw findings into auditor-friendly language. This reduces audit prep time from weeks to minutes. Now, I'll show you a prompt example that auditors can use for questions and answers or GRC professionals. And again, as I showed you, Pinecone would be my RAG system or my RAG agent in the back end or database, you can say. And I have a script that would ingest on a weekly basis. So when the new report is generated from my Lambda function, it would trigger the ingest file here to send it to Pinecone. So here's my Pinecone code here. And Pinecone would then ingest that new weekly report and upsert it into the RAG DB vector database. So based on the weekly reports that we currently have in there, I'm just going to go ahead and demonstrate. Now, this is just the top evidence chunks. So it's going to pull the top or top three or top 15 evidence chunks from your report that is sent. Now, in my demo, I just have a weekly report export so that you can also see that report. Again, my environment is very, very basic. I just enabled a few standards, and this is just to show both compliant, non-compliant, and evidence that it was able to pull and ingest it into my RAG. So I'm going to go ahead and ask this a question. So the first question is, how is logical access CC 6.3 enforced for production AWS accounts? Now, I will just run that query. I'm looking for at least the top 3 evidence chunks to come back, and I can just close that sidebar. And again, this is just coming from my RAG to allow your auditors to have a self-service way of getting any evidence that they need during audit times. And or the audit period, excuse me. And or again, if you are a CISO or a GRC professional and just want to, again, this is continuous compliance to understand if something was remediated, right? I'll show you here again in my code. There's a remediation. Let me just show you that. That's my role. Excuse me. So I have a remediation handler here that is also going to provide what to do, right? Or what you as a GRC professional can give your DevSecOps teams or your infrastructure teams, whoever handles that particular tool or component. You would have information given to you from the AI based on your evidence and how to remediate that. So as you see here, you'll get a answer back for your response. And again, some evidence may be insufficient, which is this one, but it still gives you whatever that weekly report gave my Pinecone RAG. And it will talk about relevant controls and expected implementation. It will also show the evidence locations and status. So this is what was retrieved, and each week, what was retrieved. And also gaps and limitations in the retrieved evidence. So again, as I mentioned earlier, this is something you can pass on to your teams to make sure that they remediate it so that you get a better weekly report for this particular control lot and under logical access. Now, the retrieved chunks do, again, they come from Pinecone, but this just helps show you what I'm pulling from AWS. So as you see, this is a low severity. It pulls from my weekly summary. You can see the control ID, the framework that I'm using. Here's an ISO control ID as well. Here's my S3 bucket that the evidence will be in. You also see the TSC domain here. You'll have your summary that will be given for this control, this logical access control here as well that's provided for CC 6.3. And then again, if you have additional um, data that's related to this control, it would also show here. Again, you have up to 15 just with my demo, but you know, your company, or if you use a tool similar or set up something similar, you can have way more, just depending on what you want to pass on to the auditor. But sometimes we know in audits, they just need to see and test sometimes. So this would provide that information and that evidence back to them so that they can see that it's remediated, see if there's any additional gaps, or maybe there's none at all, and you would have a success, and how to implement it for your team. And this helps you to keep up with compliance and know what's going on in your environment. Let's ask it one more question. Let's see one more question. I'm going to tell it to summarize CC6 logical access controls and show the latest evidence. Sorry. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and run that query. And let's just see what happens here. Just a moment. All right. And as you see again, This is based on this question here, or what you commanding, I would say. If it's not a question, it's a command. But this is what returns. We see a executive summary, the relevant controls and implementation status, TSC domain, so authorization and access management for CC 6.3. We see physical access restrictions for CC 6.4, implementation evidence status. So this will tell you if automated manager is either picking up that evidence, or again, your controls may not be set. The classification, the manual review required. So if it's something your DevSecOps team needs to take a look at, you can pass this along to them as well. Here is the evidence locations. So, different style, but it's still the same pulled report. The sources that are presented. So right now we just have weekly CSV summaries for demo, but those summaries that come in this report are pulled from Security Hub, AWS Config and Audit Manager. So all of this is pulled into that weekly report and ingested into Pinecone. And here are gaps and limitations in retrieved evidence. So what are the gaps that you have? What is missing out of those specific controls? Evidence that's missing that will help you to have continuous compliance to be prepped and ready for any SOC 2 audit. And again, this could be any other audit, but we're just demoing SOC 2 for now. And as you see, the same here for the top 3 controls that are being pulled. So again, the RAG system fetches the correct evidence directly from what I would call an evidence lake. So your weekly CSV reports or that are stored in your S3 bucket. And then it presents it back to the auditor based on questions or commands that are being presented and or queried, you can say. So this mirrors real audit workflows and eliminates the manual ticketing. So auditors can self-service at any time without bothering engineering. This is your showstopper moment, everyone. Now, let me show you the weekly email reporting automation portion. So on the front end, I put in this button so that it can be instant for those who want to see what's generated, let's say that same day, versus every week. But again, this will pull information or evidence from every week up until the audit. So let's say a year's time, when SOC 2 audits come around, this should have a year's worth, or you could say 52 weeks of evidence pulled that the auditor can engage with to get the evidence it needs to show if your company is compliant with the audit. So I'm going to run the weekly manager report or export. And this is just to show what the Excel sheet looks like, but I just want to show that it's going to my email, right? So I'm just going to check my email. And here is the automated weekly compliance digest that you would receive. It would have the date, the summary, executive summary of what it's pulled each week. It would have the key recommendations, and it will give you high priority, medium risk, and ongoing. So again, all of the information needed in order to understand what's going on every week for your compliance team. Now, why I did every week is because sometimes with some companies or some teams, each week you conduct a report, right, to pass on to your CISO so that your CISO can speak to your executive team about what's going on and how you are keeping compliance continuous assurance in place with a tool similar to this. Now, I can click on this to show you, but I do want to just show you from the self-service tool here. And I'm just going to open up this document. And here you can see the framework. You can see the control ID. You can see the category. I just have general for now because, again, I'll just say my environment is very, very basic. So I was able to pull at least the things that I can from it, but this would change here as far as the service type related to the control and the evidence it pulls. Manual evidence as well. It will show the severity. So right now we have a bunch of low severity, which is good. Again, this is based on the FS BP and as well as the CIS benchmark version 1.4. We also have a summary that you can get here. Again, you'll either see no evidence or no recent audit manager evidence, excuse me. Or again, if there's a control or some issues, you would also see an error or, hey, go manually review that information. You'll see the remediation recommendation. So needs a review or yes, it has been remediated. You'll also see details relating to the specific control. So this is just basically the same information most analysts would probably know, GRC analysts would know, again, relating to SOC 2 and ISO 2701. And then you would have your timestamps here in this section. And again, these are the things you can add or remove, but this is just a demo to show the report that was pulled through my Lambda function. Now, for analysts who prefer a spreadsheet view, the system would export these controls, these findings, and remediation status into a structured CSV. So we still know there's going to be old school around. And that's kind of why I put that button in the front so that they can easily download from the self-service portal if they needed evidence still in a CSV or Excel format. But this allows for fast sorting, filtering, and reporting without digging through any logs. What I built here isn't a demo, it's a pattern. It shows how can any company move forward from reactive audits to continuous compliance using automation, AI, and cloud native tooling. And this is the blueprint FAFO Incorporated uses to stay audit ready every single day. Thank you for watching my video and seeing my demo. There's more to come. This is just a minimal viable product, you can say, of what you are capable of as a GRC engineer. And if you are an analyst or a DevSecOps, and if you're a CISO out there, this is what we would want to see for continuous compliance and assurance. Thank you guys, and I will be talking to you again soon.